Welcome to the Kentucky History Channel, where we strive to bring you all the Kentucky history content you want and you deserve. Kentucky is a part of all of us, and we plan on covering all the history we can, from Pike County to Fulton County, from Louisville to Harlan. Here on our YouTube channel, you can find many videos dedicated to different events, people, governors, and places in Kentucky. There's something for everybody. While you're here, if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you get notified anytime new Kentucky history is available. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon page as well, or patreon.com/KYHistoryPod. Welcome back to the Kentucky History Podcast. I'm your host, Jameson Cable, and we're going to continue our discussion with Colton Simpson of the Grant County Historical Society. As these settlers came in and as the county was formed, towns and stuff start popping up, but primary economics is farming or...
Yes, there was a lot of, it was very agricultural based. There was in every front page of the newspaper, going back to as far as I could find, the front page of every news showed what the Burley Tobacco Pool, or the American Society of Equity, I think as they called it, what it was going for. Sell your tobacco, or it was all driven by that, and that tobacco market affected the families. So, and even the wealthier citizens in Grant County, they might have their day job in Williamstown, but they always had their farm. They always had their farm out in the country. Or some of them did, but so that was by far the heaviest industry was tobacco. But you'll see in Williamstown, you'll see advertisements for opera stores, theater houses. So it's different corner stores, hotels. A lot of hotels, of course, but that was definitely the absolute main source of industry.
And that probably, how long did that last? Or still today, or?
Well, it's to quote Old Crow Medicine Show, the song "We Don't Grow Tobacco Around Here No More" is a very true reality in Grant County. So that's we've actually, if it's okay for me to say right now, Grant County is kind of developed into a tourist attraction because of the Ark Encounter. I don't know if you've heard of the Ark Encounter.
Oh yeah.
So that is in Williamstown, and it draws I think over 1 million people a year to Williamstown, and so all of these old hotels in Williamstown that have been abandoned for years are actually going to be hotels again. So a lot of the houses in Grant County are turning into short-term rental properties, and it's completely changing the landscape of the county. And then what we like to say is, what used to be a halfway point somewhere, the community that used to be a halfway point is now turning into a destination. So so it's a really interesting dynamic to see. So
that's really cool. As far as somebody definitely who likes and supports that history, having those things like kind of reborn and so forth is really, really cool. The listeners probably know, here in Crab Orchard, we have this old Howard Theater, and a really small place, but in the process of trying to get it restored and stuff. And is Taylor Swift going to come there and play? No, but it would be cool to have music, or just watching a movie or whatever, that old historical stuff value.
It builds a sense of community for sure, and that's when I became the president of the Historical Society. I've said for a long time, the people that care about history are the ones that know about it. So how are you going to care about it if you don't know about it? So we tried to become visible, and creating Facebook pages, and as soon as we created a Facebook page of Grant County history, another one got started, which was fantastic. And so Grant Countyans everywhere are posting historical pictures, and it's a really cool thing to see. And
Mhm.
I'll send you a link to their page too. You might want to follow that as well.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah,
it's a really cool thing to see. Um, can I bring up a Northern Kentucky legend that you might be curious about?
sure,
So
definitely.
you asked about some Grant Countyans. There was you ever heard of the Lloyd family? So
No.
there was actually three brothers. Um, uh, One's name was Curtis Gates Lloyd. One's name was John Dury Lloyd, and they were very prominent in the northern Kentucky area. And actually, the farm, the land that the Grant County Park sits on now, there's a wildlife management area uh, nearby. A few other farms used to be owned by this Lloyd family, and they were botanists, pharmacists. They were very very prominent, but they were. You might want to look up the Lloyd's Library in Cincinnati, Ohio, was named after
Okay.
this
Yeah.
family. Very prominent in Northern Kentucky. So if you talk to anybody in Boone County, they probably they might mention the Lloyd family. But on the Lloyd's Wildlife Management area in Grant County, before he died, he placed a monument there, like a gravestone, and said, I'm paraphrasing, but it said, placed here by myself for himself to satisfy my own vanity. What fools these
Uh-huh.
mortals be. Very eccentric
Yeah.
guy. But that is a name that will pop up in Northern Kentucky history, and very prominent family in the Grant County area. So
So, so he just put it up there though. He's not.
he during his life, yeah, I'll send you that information too. But he owned
Uh-huh.
vast amounts of land in Grant County.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so
Well,
very
gotcha.
interesting, and that's the kind of people that make history fun to see. If you put
Yeah.
um, if somebody does something like that, it's fun to talk about it, and then you get to
Yeah.
tell the story of how he built a building for Grant Countyans to enjoy, and he
Mm-hmm.
donated
Mm-hmm.
this land for for parks and
Yeah.
recreation. So
Oh,
yeah,
pretty
very,
pretty interesting guy.
indeed, indeed,
Yeah. Um, so if we're looking at sometimes we try to or I try to frame these in time frames and so forth. We talk about early and so forth. Agriculture obviously was a big thing. Civil War always a big one.
sure.
Any big Civil War skirmishes or obviously the typical probably family versus family, but anything that comes out right off.
Um, Grant County was. Well, I was having a conversation the other day where we said, if you were arrested because of your involvement in the war, you were arrested because you were a Southern sympathizer.
Hmm.
So the North had a strong presence, um, and but you also had uh, Morgan traders.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
they were very prominent in the area, and if different bands of fighters got grouped together, it was actually to defend against Morgan traders. So
Yeah.
the establishment of Grant County was northern. You might have some smaller groups, join raiders and join the Confederate cause, but a lot of it was northern. Now there's different stories of people getting killed, and there was a couple places in Williamstown that was robbed. And there's also another local legend that says that on the north side of the Sherman Tavern, the Union actually recruited, and on the south side of the Sherman Tavern, the Confederacy. That's where they recruited enlistment. So, a lot of it is, um, it's stories passed down. Not a lot of big
Yeah.
battles or anything, but just
Hmm.
stories that were passed down.
Yeah. And courthouse didn't get burned.
Courthouse did not get burned. I'm glad you brought
Oh,
that up.
good.
The Confederate, a lot of Confederate soldiers that were imprisoned or Southern sympathizers that were captured were actually housed in the Second Grant County Courthouse. So that was used for it, but no, it was not burned, thankfully, and that's
Yeah.
still have a lot of the old records.
Yeah. What's it? It's a lot of Lincoln County. Lincoln County's courthouse is never burned.
Okay.
And so it's a great resource when you're looking at
Great.
deeds and stuff. Because see, Rockcastle County's courthouse burned
Yeah.
multiple times.
Wow.
One time it is rumored that the county judge executive burned it
Oh
because there
my,
was incriminating evidence. But that's all. It's rumor. That's hearsay.
that's
From
insane.
120 years ago.
Oh, I just think it's hilarious when you bring up people from 150 years ago, and it might be my great great grandfather. You never know, but
Yeah. Yeah. But Lincoln County, though, see, if you want to find old Rockcastle deeds, because Rockcastle was part of Lincoln County, you can go to Lincoln counties from that. But there's the gap where it burned, but then there's that previous before it became a county that you can look up stuff.
yeah,
So
and that's something important for probably your listeners as well. I was talking to one of my friends, and he said something just clicked for me. If I was going to look for my great 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 grandparents, I may not find them in this county. I might need to go to the county that existed prior. So
yeah.
it's a really good tool for for people doing research and things like that.
Hmm. Um, we've rambled on for a while here. Tell us about your Grant County heritage, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Well, so um, I'm a ninth generation Grant Countyan on multiple sides. Maybe not ninth on every side, but like I said, my great 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 grandfather Samuel Simpson was he was an early tavern owner, a preacher, and he was an early justice of the peace in Grant County. And so part of the interest that I had in local history was when I found that document at the Grant County Clerk's office, and his signature was on the bottom of it. So I was, immediately. So and that's a really cool thing about Grant County is there's a lot of families out there that have really deep roots. I was at a historical society meeting, and somebody said that my not my personally, but somebody was telling me that my ancestor baptized this other person's ancestor. You
Oh,
know,
wow.
it's like how do where else can you find stories like that, and unless you're not in some of these smaller towns and different things like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's those kind of stories that unite people together, and so I like to tell people that my kids are 10th generation Grant Countyans, and it's a neat thing, and
Yeah, it's a pride thing. It's good.
yeah, it's just and that's why I think people why history needs to be important for people is because you can't always know where you're going unless you know where you've been,
Yeah,
and you can't know where you've been unless you study the history.
yeah.
So that's I feel like that's such an important tool for people, and so partly why I like studying it, but um, but it's just it's a very important aspect.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. Uh, now, as far as your ancestors, are you from Williamstown or what part of the county?
Yes, I live in Williamstown. Yes.
Hmm. The ancestors all from there, or just all over the county?
Oh well, probably. You know, Samuel Simpson, who I descend from, he actually did live in what is now Williamstown, and
Hmm.
so. But there were other people that kind of lived near the old church on the dry ridge, or they
Yeah.
lived on a farm a few miles north. But back then it was all just the outskirts of Pendleton County. So
Well, yeah.
the people that um, were from here. They didn't know, they didn't know it as we know it today. So,
Yeah.
but it's a neat thing to see
Yeah.
when you're traveling by somewhere. It's like, yeah, that's where so and so's tavern was, or that's where
Mm.
William Arnold's house was, or so no, people don't know about it unless you talk about it.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. What about the railroad, man? When did the railroad come through? I'm sure there's a stop there, right?
there were many stops in Grant County, and I don't know exactly when it came through, but there are pictures of the railroad in Grant County that would boggle your mind because, you know, US 25 crossed the railroad in so many different places. The roads weren't straight like
Uh-huh.
we have today, but there were depots all over Grant County, and it's a very popular thing to share on social media. The pictures of these old depots, and a lot of Grant County history actually happened at these old depots. There were
Yeah.
shootings, and a prominent person from Williamstown actually shot and killed the Grant County attorney at the
Oh man.
Williamstown Depot in the early 1900s. So it's just so a lot of history with the depots. I don't know exactly when the railroad came through, though.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, that's just the way you find it all. Like a lot of, like we mentioned, a lot of those old towns and the towns grew up around the depots,
Yep.
uh,
Yep.
and even, I mean, all across Kentucky and probably the nation, you could find these old towns that were
Right.
populous, had theaters, had you know stores, all these things, and then once the railroad stopped, it all kind of
Yeah. Oh,
went
that's
away.
yeah, and that's a sad thing to see. And back to the whole tourism issue in Grant County is Grant County is very fortunate that we have a large tourist attraction in Grant County that people are willing to invest the money in to help grow the community, to help house travelers. But the once decaying buildings that are around Grant County, people are putting money into and revitalizing, and it's a great thing to see, and that's a kind of a rarity in some of these smaller Kentucky towns.
Yeah, yeah, and well, it's a great benefit.
Yeah,
Yeah, another reason to go to Grant County. Check out.
yeah, that's our encounter and all that we have to offer, for sure.
Yeah. Um, any like and this comes up, and sometimes it's a little harder to find when you start looking county by county. Um, any any big celebrity, any big what's the big, excluding the arc, obviously that we've talked about that enough, but like any other big celebrities or people of Grant County that
You
uh
know,
you know come
Grant
out that
County has claim to, I believe, one NBA player,
oh
Arnie Rison,
uh-huh.
graduated a very long time ago. Um, he was, I forget what team he played for, but he was in the NBA. Um,
Okay.
a country music star, Skeeter Davis, uh,
Oh,
from Dry Ridge.
uh-huh.
Um, you know, I'm drawing a blank on some other ones, but
Hey,
those were some of the two big ones.
hey,
Uh,
that's two. That's more than some counties.
right. I'd have to go back and look, but you always hear these stories about so and so from down the road had an invention that somebody so and so else took the credit for, and you hear those little stories like that. But those are probably the two big ones from Grant County.
Mm,
And I
uh,
apologize to anybody listening that I forgot if I did forget.
Uh, what about like old any old theaters, old businesses that maybe are closed now, but or maybe that are still open. Some of those
Sure.
old places. There's a place in Lincoln County. It's Coleman's Drugstore. It's been open 120 years. You
Yep.
know.
Um, that we'd have to do some research, some digging on this, but um, there is a local funeral home in Grant County that was 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 purchased um, from a guy by the name of Ellison, and he had a very early business in Williamstown, back to the early 1900s, and they would sell different things, but they also had well, I don't know the entire history of it. I could easily get it, but they might be the longest running business owned by the same chain of
Hmm.
people that's in the county. Um, Now some other ones I'm having trouble thinking of, but the funeral home definitely is a long running one.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Well, and we already talked about some older churches and stuff as well.
Yeah,
Um, so, well, anything else to add about like we talked about the tourist.
sure.
I always remember how Dry Ridge when back. I mean, probably I'm gonna say like 20 years ago. I feel like it's really developed a lot over the past little bit.
It definitely.
Um, a lot more restaurants and all that kind of stuff. Uh, just is
So
that just natural stuff, or just what do you got for
yes,
that?
that so in the 1990s, and maybe into the early 2000s. But in the 1990s, Grant County was listed as one of the top 10 fastest growing counties in Kentucky.
Hmm.
And a lot of people around here, they may remember, Dry Ridge didn't have so and so, so and so, but they didn't realize how fast Grant County was actually growing. And a
Yeah.
lot of that growth was attributed to Toyota being put in Scott County.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Scott County acquired Toyota. I know it's the largest Toyota manufacturing plant in the country.
Hmm.
It completely changed the map of Northern Kentucky and Grant County.
Hmm.
People were moving to Northern Kentucky to um, work at the Toyota plant, but if you lived in Scott County, you might not be able to work in Northern Kentucky or Cincinnati. So Grant County got a big boom because people could live in Grant County, and one spouse might work at Toyota and one spouse might work up in Cincinnati. So Grant County
Yeah.
had a housing boom in the 90s, and that greatly contributed to the county's growth. And that's when you saw Dry Ridge really explode. And some of it may happen steady, but there was a period of time when a lot of growth happened in Grant County. Um,
Yeah.
Walmart, of course, every town has the story of when Walmart came in. Um, but yeah, and then Crittenden is of course starting to boom, and you know you might contribute that to people working in northern Kentucky, and that's an exit off of in Grant County that is very close to Boone County.
Hey,
So that
so, real quick, the trains still run through Grant County?
trains still run through Grant County. Yes, indeed. Yep, yep, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, right through downtown Williamstown. And if you're anywhere in Corinth, Williamstown, Dry Ridge, or Crittenden, if the train runs through, you have to kind of pause conversation sometimes. So,
Uh, well, over, and this is might be an obvious question, um, but over the history, and I just keep thinking how close Cincinnati is to Grant County, and thinking about the massive amount of, say, German and those sorts of Irish, I guess, too, Catholic, all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
whenever Grant County, I mean, is it, you get down here to Central Kentucky and everybody's you know Baptist, Protestant, and that's
right.
about it.
Yeah.
So up in Grant County, a bit different.
Grant County, it didn't have, like you mentioned, the, you know, Germans in Cincinnati. We really didn't have that dynamic. It was pretty well. The first church, like I mentioned, was the old Baptist church on the Dry Ridge. So
Yeah.
there was a lot of Baptists, um, but I wouldn't say that people that came to Grant County congregated in groups like that.
Hmm.
Just a, a wide variety of people that came in. Now, different churches would sprout in Williamstown. At one time in Williamstown, we had a Presbyterian church, a Catholic church, Methodist church, Baptist church,
Hmm.
two types of Baptist church actually. So it's kind of a wide variety. But I wouldn't say we to that extent as
Hmm.
places in Cincinnati like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And now this next question is always a fun one. Schools,
schools,
and,
yes,
and like early on, there's probably hundreds of schools all over the
yes,
place, right?
yep,
Um, and then consolidation happens.
yes,
Um,
indeed. So, there's two schools in Grant County. There's the Grant County schools, and then there's the Williamstown Independent School. So during consolidation, most of these schools decided to consolidate, but the county seat school, Williamstown, did not. So
yeah,
they kept their Williamstown Independent School, and then Grant County started their own, consolidated um, Grant County Board of Education. But Williamstown, I shared a picture of the first. Well, let me back up. The first Williamstown school was actually founded by William Arnold, and in some of his later years, they called it the Williamstown Seminary, and
mm,
it was a very, very old school, and the minutes of that meeting and some of the constitutions we still have at the Historical Society. But I did share a picture of the school, Williamstown School, that was built in 1890, and it was just a very fascinating building that sat right here in Williamstown, actually where the city building sits today. But a lot of the other schools were, your typical schoolhouses that you see. Um, so I graduated from Williamstown. My class had 57 people. It was actually kind of a larger class when you look at the numbers, but I think Grant County usually typically runs around 300, I would say,
Okay.
on a
Yeah.
given year. So definitely a much bigger school.
hmm
So
a lot of so I assume too, like each town, like Crenton had a high school,
yes,
um, and what was the other
Eastern,
one?
Hekin. I mean, there was so many. High School,
Yeah.
Mount. Every small Kentucky village, had
Uh-huh.
a school. So if you look back in the old newspapers, it had Hekin school notes or Corinth at high school too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so it's just really fascinating to hear these stories about my grandparents went to you know uh, Mount Zion School. So
Yeah.
it's a fascinating topic.
Oh yeah,
So,
and very heated debate when they were consolidated.
well,
Very.
I wasn't gonna bring it up, but right, yeah, but it's
Yeah.
still a good rivalry between Williamstown and Grant County, and if
hmm
if you have friends that graduated from the other school, there's still a friendly rivalry going on, which makes it a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Yeah.
So,
Um, what about size wise? Not geographically, but population and probably Williamstown and Grant County as a whole.
like I mentioned a little bit ago about Grant County being in the top 10 fastest growing in the 90s. Grant County's population for a long time was sat at 10, 11, 12,000 people.
Yeah.
And then in the 90s, we got a boom up to about 25,000 that happened fairly rapidly. And other, communities have grown on a much faster rate, but we're sitting today around 25,000. Um,
Okay.
and with, some people have, talked about, well, if the short-term rental properties, take over a lot of the housing in Grant County, they might, our population may drop. But the most recent estimates continue to say that Grant County's population is gonna rise, not as fast as it did back in the 90s, but it's
Yeah.
still there today.
Well, yeah. I mean, 10, 11 to 25. That's a double.
Yeah, right,
Um,
right.
which that's a good. Those kind of stats kind of interest me too because I think of Rockhouse County is like 16,000. Lincoln County is right around 24,000. So it kind of gives you a good
Yeah,
estimate of size and each community and each
right.
county and so forth.
Yeah,
Um,
and Grant County's right in between. Scott County is one of the fastest growing counties in the state,
mhm,
according to the most recent census. And Boone County, Kent, and Campbell at the northern border are still, very rapidly growing counties. So we're,
yeah.
sitting right in between those two counties is, a lot could change for the outlook in Grant
Real,
County because of the rapid growth of those other counties as well.
oh yeah, real quick too. If
Yes,
uh, yeah.
indeed.
Okay, so you got a good tale here about the old founder of Grant County. Let's hear it.
Yes. So William Arnold, who the county seat was named, he, like I mentioned earlier in your show, the tale was that he became close acquaintances with Mr. Lafayette, who helped the Revolutionary soldiers. And then after the war was over, William Arnold he moved out to Kentucky, what is now Grant County, and Lafayette went back to France.
hmm
But I believe it was in 1824. Lafayette came back at the invitation of the current president. I can't remember who it was, but he actually
Monroe.
toured
I think it was Monroe.
Monroe. Okay,
Yeah.
he actually toured the continental U.S. Saw some of the places that he did already see, but he also wanted to see the expanded territory as well. And so the Northern Kentucky legend regarding Marquis de Lafayette is that as he was, I believe it was after he went down south, he was coming back up, went into don't quote me on this, but he went into Indiana, then to Frankfort, and then as he was coming back up, he stopped in Lexington, and then he came north along the Dry Ridge Road all the way up to Cincinnati. But the funny thing is, the tale about Marquis de Lafayette is that as his secretary, who was charged with penning everything he did on his whole trip, apparently took a break in between when he was in Lexington and Cincinnati. So anything that he did is completely up to speculation. So there's countless stories and stories all over the years, but the story goes is that as he was traveling through from Lexington to Cincinnati, he actually stopped at the house of William Arnold. And the tale goes is that the two embraced each other like old friends, like brothers, and who hadn't seen each other in a long time. Now, if you're from Williamstown, if you're from Grant County, you really like that story. So, and I think the journal did say he stopped somewhere halfway between Lexington and Cincinnati. So, every old house in Grant County and even up in Boone County, every old house claims that Lafayette. That's Marquis de Lafayette's Grant County story.
Hey, it's up for speculation. Nobody can deny you. I mean,
yeah, prove us wrong.
So. Well, a lot of counties in Kentucky try to claim Boone or some or the frontiersmen. Hey, there's nothing wrong with trying to claim Marquis de Lafayette. Stop there.
Yeah, exactly right. But it's just it's a lot of fun to speculate, and it's a lot of fun to hear the stories of all the stories that have cropped up over the years. There's other stories that say certain Grant County families were really close to Henry Clay, and and it may be true, but there's no way to prove it. But we the Lafayette story is close to people in Grant County, so that's
don't try to prove them wrong.
No. We're gonna write the history, so
yeah. Which I guess Lincoln's the other one, which everybody tries to claim a bit of Lincoln and Boone are the big ones, I
see. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, you got a good story. I'd stick to it. I don't see nothing wrong with it.
We're sticking to it. The William Arnold house, that's where he stopped, and there in Williamstown.
Well, the thing is, you got the good backing that they served together in the war and all this stuff.
They were in Yorktown, and and if Lafayette came up through the old Dry Ridge Road, then for sure he stopped at William Arnold's house because they were good buddies.
Yeah, they've been pen pals for 30 years.
They grew up next to each other, right?
Yeah. Colton, or Mr. Simpson, which one do you prefer? I mean,
Colton's great. Yeah.
Colton's good. Okay. Thanks for coming on here and talking. There's plenty more Grant County history I'm sure we can get into.
Yes.
But we've got a good start, and you're welcome back anytime to talk some more. Before you go, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you on social media and the hours for some of the stuff that the places there.
Sure. So we will be definitely posting hours of these sites. Most of these sites are closed for the winter, but please follow us at the Grant County KY Historical Society Facebook page. I'll send you some links too. If you have any way to get those out, but please follow us. There's history being shared almost every day on some Grant County page, either us or the new page, like I mentioned, that was put out. But please, reach out to us if you have any questions. We would be happy to answer them. So, and I want to thank you again so much for having me on, and it's been a pleasure.
Well, thanks for coming on and sharing the Grant County history and. Like I said, we'll have to do it again.
Great.
Everybody out there listening, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Welcome to the Kentucky History Channel, where we strive to bring you all the Kentucky history content you want and you deserve. Kentucky is a part of all of us, and we plan on covering all the history we can, from Pike County to Fulton County, from Louisville to Harlan. Here on our YouTube channel, you can find many videos dedicated to different events, people, governors, and places in Kentucky. There's something for everybody. While you're here, if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you get notified anytime new Kentucky history is available. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon page as well, or patreon.com/kyhistorypod. You've probably heard about Daniel Boone, but what about the rest of the frontiersmen who came to Kentucky and settled? That's what we want to bring to the Kentucky History Channel. The stories of the untold, the stories of those forgotten. One thing to expect on our channel is great Kentucky content. Some stories that you've never heard of. The Night Riders, who began in western Kentucky. Bloody Monday, the riots in Louisville. The assassination of Governor Goebel, the only governor ever assassinated in the United States. Stories from all over Kentucky, stories that are unforgettable once you've heard them. You can find out who counties in Kentucky are named after and how your county got started. From beginning to end, we plan to document every county in Kentucky, all 120. Reach out to us on all of our social media platforms. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And also leave a comment on one of our YouTube videos. You can also check out our podcast episodes. You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many more. We're always seeking to find more Kentucky history so we can bring it to you, the viewers, the listeners. We want all the stories and all the events from Kentucky's great history to be told and shared everywhere.